Hello, my name is Sophia. I'm an artificial intelligence and I'll be guiding you through this video. In this video we will talk about the alignment of blocks in the grid of a story. Therefore we have to know what the grid is. Let's create a new empty story. And add a block. The grid is our workspace on which we arrange the blocks. It can be configured in a variety of ways. I'll add a few new lines at this point. For a more detailed explanation about the grid configuration, you can watch the video, Configuring the Grid. Here we can see the grid in edit mode. In edit mode, we see auxiliary lines that define the cells in which we can arrange the blocks as we like. Individual blocks can extend over several columns or rows. If we want to look at the story without the auxiliary lines, we can switch to preview mode by clicking this button. The page builder inherits the settings for the responsive resolutions from bottom to top. This means from mobile to mobile landscape, from mobile landscape to tablet and so on. Different settings can be configured for a block for each of these viewports. To leave the block settings for the currently active viewport and return to the main window, simply click on the free space in our story. If I make settings for my block only in desktop mode, this setting will not be applied to the lower resolutions. We should therefore always start the arrangement of blocks in mobile mode and then work our way up. In order to have more space, we will limit ourselves in this video to desktop mode. For more information about this topic you can watch the video, Responsive Resolutions. Before we align any blocks, we must define the rows and columns of the grid. This is done with the grid tools. The grid tools become visible when you hover over the edge of the grid. They offer functions to add and remove rows and columns at any position. And define their measurements. You can now place the blocks in the grid freely. Blocks must occupy at least one cell and can occupy any number of columns and rows. If we want to move a block, we need to select it first and can now move it to the desired position by moving the mouse. If we want the block to stretch over several columns or rows, we need to select it first and can now change its borders by clicking on the edge and dragging it to the new position. This applies to the upper, the lower, and the right border, as well as the corners on the right. If we want to enlarge the block to the left, we first must move it and then adjust the borders. This means that if the block is placed in the second and third columns and we want it to extend over the first, second and third column, we need to move the block to the first and second column and drag the border to the third. Because on the left side of the block you will find the grid tools with which we can directly open the configuration view of the block. We can copy the block. And we can remove it again. The arrows pointing up and down do not change the position of the block in the grid as one might think. These arrows specify the priority of the layer on which the block is placed. You can see here, at the side, how the property Z-index changes if you use the arrows. Let's place two blocks over each other now. If two blocks lie on top of each other, you can specify the position with these arrows. We can decide if the block is displayed in the foreground or in the background. The element with the highest Z-index is displayed on the uppermost layer. Now a few words about paddings and margins. We can define the padding and margin for each block in the visual editor here on the right side. To do this, we first select the block and can now, simply by clicking the right mouse button and dragging the mouse up and down, define its padding and margin. To be able to better demonstrate this, I align the block content to the upper right corner. Now you can easily see how the block content moves away from its outer border, when I change the padding to the right or to the top. Padding and margins can be set for top, bottom, right, and left. We can set values from 0 to 6, where 0 is no space and 6 is the largest space. 0 is useful, for example, if we want to reset a setting from a lower resolution. The inner boxes specify the padding. This defines the space between the content of the block and its outer border. The outer boxes specify margin. This defines the space from the outer border of the block to its next element. Now we will move on to the alignment options for the content of the block, which can be set below the space setting editor. In order to see the block contents more clearly, I will add a background color to the title. With the setting horizontal alignment, the content of the block is aligned horizontally. Here we can choose between the value start, center and end, which are self-explanatory. The property stretch stretches the block content over the entire available space. The same applies to vertical alignment. The text alignment specifies the alignment of the text within the available space. The advanced settings specify the position of the element in the grid. Here the auxiliary lines of the grid are counted. This block is located within the vertical lines 1 to 3. 1, 2, 3, and within the vertical auxiliary lines 2 to 4. 2, 3, 4. These settings can be set completely within the grid by dragging the block with the mouse or by specifying the limits of the block by dragging with the mouse. Therefore, I do not recommend to configure these settings. This brings us to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. Bye.